much do you know about the psychedelic space or mushrooms in general? I gotta admit, I don't know very much. So joining me today is Todd Shapiro, Red Light Holland CEO. Todd, you recently had a merger with Krasos, which is a cannabis company, correct?
Yeah, lots of exciting stuff going on for Red Light Holland, and I mean the merger's been announced. It's got to go through a circular. It's got to go through a vote, of course. So it's still a process to happen, but a very exciting time for both companies, I would say.
We're talking about psychedelics. We're talking about cannabis. Give me an idea of what Red Light Holland does if I'm an investor looking at this and not quite understanding what your company is.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking. So it's a really great story, actually. And you know, I come from the media background, and one of the trends that I noticed a few years ago, interviewing people, I worked on Sirius XM and stuff, is that a lot of people were dealing with a lot of sort of mental health issues, anxiety and depression, and like post-traumatic stress disorder. I used to, speak to veterans and stuff like this. And interestingly enough, in long form conversation, when you got to make people feel comfortable and open up and talk, it kept coming back to sort of this: I'm trying microdosing. I'm using psilocybin from natural occurring products called the magic mushroom. You've heard of the magic mushroom. And I got to be honest, I did a quick deep dive into all of this, and I was sort of losing my passion for media. And I thought to myself, if I could ever kind of try to make a difference in this world, I have two small children, what would it be? And for some reason, it just hit me that I wanted to try to be a voice, and a polarizing voice at that, to speak to the people who are wanting access now. And again, as a company and personally, I cannot make medical claims about the results of magic mushrooms. But anecdotally, all anybody has to do is look at story after story, hashtag on Twitter and go on a hashtag on Instagram and see what people are saying if they type in microdose. And the idea is that it's helping people. So why is that relevant to what you asked me? Well, I quickly found out where I could get into this market. And I can get into this market in the Netherlands in a legal framework. And they're not magic mushrooms, however, they're magic truffles. And magic truffles are sold in smart shops, and they're sold online to adults 18 plus legally. And they're next to a Baskin Robbins. They're out in the open. It's not like it's a seedy industry or anything. There's a 21% VAT tax on truffles. So instantaneously, for the first time in my life, I decided to try to make a difference, really, truly make a difference. Went out and raised about $4 million at about 6 cents with a post-money $11 million valuation. And we started up shop, being in what I think, to the best of my research, and we're traded under TRIP on the CSE and Truff on the OTC, was being the first publicly traded company on the planet that sold legal magic truffles with psilocybin, which is the psychoactive ingredient, which your listeners and viewers would definitely be familiar with, and what is part of the magic mushroom.
And what's interesting too is this your story kind of sounds similar to what I heard about medical marijuana just a few years ago. And what we're kind of seeing now as the US kind of changes its viewpoint on marijuana in general. Do you agree with that assessment? Are they similar? Are they different?
Yeah, and I'm from Canada, and I do see that similar path for sure. Cannabis paved the way in Canada. It started off in about the year 2000. The Canadian government allowed those for compassionate grounds to use cannabis, and those with AIDS and et cetera, to help with, whether it's end of care, or they're terminally ill, or sadly, through the anxiety of being ill, they wanted to help them with cannabis. And we saw how that path opened up to a legal framework. And for those who don't know, in America, Canada for a couple of years now has had a completely legal framework written around cannabis legislation. And now, why do I use that as an example, especially in Canada? Very recently, the current health minister has allowed people who are terminally ill and those who are suffering from severe trauma to use the natural occurring magic mushroom, to be able to use that to help them with anxiety. And it's being very effective. Great case studies. A lot of people are opening up, saying they're so thankful for the government. Of course, we applaud their decision. So at some point, does that then open up the access to natural occurring product, magic mushrooms, which have existed since the dinosaurs have existed, to be able to provide access to those who want it as adults? Because let's face it, there is a mental health crisis going on right now. While I can't make the medical claims, if we have a government that's already opened up, admitting, setting a precedent that those who are suffering from severe trauma can use this. There must be some self-admission there from the government to say, well, we know it's working. So at some point, whether it's regular individuals like you and I, Catherine, and listen, I suffer from a great deal amount of anxiety. And personally, when I go to the Netherlands, I love microdosing because what it does for me, it helps park my anxiety. It helps me allow to focus. It gives me a little bit more energy because I think I'm less focused on the negative energy, but more focused on the positive thoughts going through my brain. And that's me speaking, not a company. And so to me, there definitely is a path following suit. And we're seeing it in America with Oregon Measure 109 being passed. They're writing a legal framework, which, by the way, isn't a prescriptive framework. It's a framework for any adult to be able to have access one day to magic mushrooms, the natural occurring psilocybin of the psychoactive ingredient within that, or magic truffles, which is what we deal with. And why I bring Measure 109 up is because it's about a screening and an education process for adults. That's the way they're looking to bring this to market. We're seeing Senate Bill 519 in California being passed, we think, in the next coming weeks. And we're seeing a lot of great talk, of course, finally in America, about federal regulation and legalization around cannabis, which is another reason why, back to the Cresco Pharma merger, we decided to try to capitalize and seize the moment on all these potential markets. And they are massive markets. I mean, we're talking about an $80 billion THC market in cannabis by the year 2030. We're talking about I think it's like a $30 billion market by 2027 for CBD products. And when you think about what we're doing with magic truffles, and then eventually we think magic mushrooms across the world, even take, say, a tenth of that market by 2030. I mean, that to us would already be a $10 billion market, $8 to $10 billion market that we can capitalize on as the only publicly traded company proudly selling microdose kits now. And we're making a huge difference doing it. And sorry if I get long-winded, Catherine, but I'm so proud of our company because of our corporate governance, of our regulatory sort of work, and making sure that everything is backed with legal opinions. This isn't a fly-by-the-night operation. We have a telecounseling support app that's already available for our end users. We also have an iMicro app beyond just what can happen for telecounseling and support, but also where we can, with consensual, approval, get consumers' data, because we want to get the data, as long as they allow us to see how microdosing is working for them. And our product is called iMicrodose. And if we can learn some behavior, we feel as a company responsibly, we can go to the governments and say, hey, Oregon Authority, look what's going on right now. This is what we're learning in a legal framework. So we're really proud of how we're getting it across, how we're getting the message across, and how we're learning from our end consumer. Because most importantly, we want to help people, and we can't help people unless they tell us we're helping them, because we're not allowed to do that.
And of course, this space is quite small, I would imagine, for now. But I did see that Marley One just launched, which is, you specified that you guys sell the truffles. Sounds like Marley One is focused on the psychedelic mushrooms themselves. I'm not, you can clarify with me if there's a difference here. You're the expert. But I'm curious if you're worried about competitors in this space at all.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's always going to be people who jump on any sort of new trend in any new sector. And I think that's great. Competition's great. I think as long as the companies are in it for the right reasons, they're not pumping a stock and coming up with BS announcements just to say they're doing something in the sector. Like some of the things I see, we got the next great technology for delivery systems, or the next great technology for tincture forms. Listen, you can't sell psilocybin like that right now. The only way you can do it in certain countries in the world is in its natural occurring state. So it kind of makes me laugh that people are getting way ahead of themselves, and investors, in my opinion, are being fooled by that. For us, yeah, is there competition? Listen, I turned down Marley. They came to me months ago. I have that on email. I thought they wanted way too much money, and I didn't think we had enough in terms of getting revenues after the royalties that would make our bottom line and give shareholder investments. I also don't know if a 20 to 30-year-old isn't popular with the Marley line as they used to be. Listen, I love Bob Marley. I just don't know if my end consumer, we're targeting, 20 to 30 young professionals, and obviously a little bit older. Maybe there's other influencers we can work with. And in fact, we do work with influencers. We have one of the world's top global comedians, a part of our chief creative officer. His name is Russell Peters. Again, he's a Canadian, so that's part of the reason why we love him. But I mean, this is a guy on the Forbes list in 2014, I believe, was named right under Jerry Seinfeld as the top highest earning comedian on the planet. Why? Because he's a brilliant entity within himself. He understands how to market and how to get exposure. He's been on Joe Rogan twice talking about Red Light Holland. So I think we'll be a brand leader to come. I don't think anyone's going to mess with us. I believe we're kind of like, it's as polarizing as this may sound. We're we're like the Barstool Sports of psychedelics. We're very proud of who we are, and we're very proud about wanting to provide access and having adults make the choice if they want to put in these products that come from the ground, whether they're fungi or whether they're plants, for years and years and years, that there should be their choice through, of course, responsible use and education and information. And that's what we're doing.
So, of course, influencers are a great way to reach the younger investors that we see coming into market now. But what about people like my mom? How do I convince her that taking psychedelic mushrooms is a good thing and not, it doesn't have the bad rep that it used to have 30, 40 years ago?
For sure. And when you ask me that question, my mom's the worst example because she's one of the most liberal minded people in the world. It's almost like a beautiful, lovely, spiritual lady who would try a natural occurring product rather than a synthesized one. I do agree with you, though. And listen, when we're doing this Creso Pharma merger, and one of the things that we're really looking at are two specific pending acquisitions. One of them is on the Creso Pharma side, which they're in the midst of acquiring a lab in Halifax, Canada, called Hallucinix. And Hallucinix has applied for a controlled dealer's license. And what that means for your viewers is that would give them the ability to work with psilocybin, do R&D, have a supply of synthetics come in and find out some sort of drug discovery based on the molecules or the compounds. And as well, Red Light Holland's been negotiating for a couple of months now. It's going on a little bit longer than I anticipated, but that's okay. And they're very productive talks. And this isn't material information because I have announced a non-binding LOI with a company called Mira Life Sciences in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And what makes St. Vincent so unique is that this government is so progressive. They've gone on record to try to start this modern medicinal wellness industry that we hopefully will be a part of. We're just truly understanding the legislation now beyond the deal with Mira. Like we think that we understand what the license stands for. But if that closes, it gives us the right to work with ayahuasca, peyote, MDMA, on top of psilocybin and some others. So don't get me wrong. I agree with you, Catherine, that there were different age groups or maybe just different mentalities, whether you're young or old. Some will want a natural occurring product, and one will want one day down the road that's standardized like a synthetic pill. The only thing I will say to that, and don't get me wrong, I'm not poo-pooing on science at all. Trust me, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need it. It's very important. The studies going into it, the FDA breakthrough therapies, the John Hopkins, supporting it. This stuff is huge, and we really, really are grateful for it happening and for the movement, not only just about natural occurring products, but synthesized, making a difference, because that's what we want to do, is make a difference in people's lives. But what I would caution people of is, if we have a substance that's from the ground, why not let's promote it, get behind this movement together? Because often what we forget about, especially in Canada with a great healthcare system, is there's people all across the world that don't have access to prescribed medications, that don't have access to, a simple penicillin medication. They don't have doctors prescribing this stuff. So the more we get behind a movement, the more we can help people across the world, not just in our own backyards. And that's what we think is really important at the end of the day.
And that leads me directly to regulation. I mean, if we started using this, if third world countries started using this instead of penicillin, perhaps, or, one of those situations, those are obviously hypotheticals because neither of us are in the science field. But what would that look like? And what would that look like for you guys? And how would that impact investors?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if markets open up, it's great for increasing shareholder value, because one of the things Red Light Holland always likes to do and approach things is thinking of pins in a map. Where can we be next? Can we be in Jamaica with that legal framework? We're in the Netherlands. We've actually managed to get product to Brazil, and we've got it through a named patient access through Anvisa, which is their regulatory health authorities. We've also got product into Canada from the Netherlands, crossed international borders into Canada with a psilocybin import license, and we're working with a lab called Seacrest Labs that's done some testing on the product, the Magic Truffles. Keep in mind, this is significant for us and almost monumental for Red Light Holland, because this is a consumer goods product. This is a product that's branded iMicrodose, that has come in through international borders to ultimately, one, to hopefully get to patients, and two, the other for testing. So we want to break down barriers carefully, but we want to work with governments, and we want to show governments, most importantly, Catherine, again, back to the data collection and back to the corporate governance and following all the rules, is that we're doing this because people are getting it anyway. There's illicit markets. anywhere you look. And there's probably a ton of your listeners and viewers right now going, you know what? I've used magic mushrooms in the past, or my buddies in LA right now are totally microdosing, and go and look what happens in Silicon Valley for the past 40 years. I mean, ask Steve Jobs. Well, I mean, you could have asked Steve Jobs in the day, sorry, but you know, about what he was doing to create the iPhone. So won't the government want to one day realize that a younger generation and social movements are so powerful? They've seen synthetics destroy family members, whether it's opioids or benzos, or, you know, there's been some pretty tough stuff with pharma over the last 5-10 years. And if people are going to want this stuff and get access to it anyway, why not do it legally? Why not do it carefully, responsibly, provide them that education that we're doing right now? And of course, at the end of the day, collect their tax dollars. By the way, I want to show you something. I love branding stuff. So we got like masks, if you like to wear your mask. We got, this to me is a very significant thing that we've created. So we purchased a company out of Silicon Valley called Radix Motion. And before we purchased them for, you know, in terms of technology and innovation and all this great stuff, they created a virtual reality experience for based on basically learning about psilocybin, learning about magic truffles, and learning about microdosing. And why that's significant, it's back to that educational process. Our plan, and COVID slowed this down a little bit, but is to get these headsets into stores. Hopefully people won't be afraid to put them on now. Obviously we'll need sanitizer and stuff, but it's a 5-minute instructional video about all this stuff. And by the way, if you're uncomfortable with it, the store clerk will be advised to tell the patron, maybe this isn't for you, because it still is a sensitive topic. And to answer your question, again, way long-winded over here about end access for people. I mean, to me, what's most important is people learn, because it is a sensitive topic. There are certain situations when you definitely should not be taking psilocybin. You know, their careful use is the most important thing. And for us, at least in the microdose sort of format that we're selling it in, we believe that it can significantly make a difference. And we can't wait to learn more from our customers and get the data to hopefully prove that out.
And Tom, my final question for you is, you have Bruce Linton, ex-CEO of Canopy Growth, as an advisor. And I'm wondering, you know, between the merger that we talked about with Creso, in the United States, what does the path look like for you guys when it comes to reaching the younger investor, which is obviously going to be a market that you're going to be interested in, correct?
Totally. And listen, to start off, the idea that I work so closely with Bruce Linton, I still pinch myself. You know, we got to know each other. I used to host his shindigs in a small town where he set up his shop for Canopy Growth. Tweed, it was at a town called Smith Falls. I'd bring out Snoop Dogg and stuff. We'd have a lot of fun. And I think what Bruce saw in me was hard work. We're a small team who's careful with our burn, and we're all about hard work, and we're all about vision and innovation and momentum. And we're trying to continually make news, proper news, careful news, to grow this business, increase shareholder value, including you know, we have a farm in the Netherlands where we produce our own magic truffles. We did that right away. We started growing 1 million grams, and then we went to, we're like, you know, we're growing huge amounts of truffles, and we're selling them. And we bought a distribution company to help with our distribution of truffles. We also now bought a home grow mushroom kit farm in Canada. We have 80% stake of it, not magic mushrooms, but just these cool home grow kits, because mushrooms are cool and mushrooms are functional. And as well, we now are partnering up with another big time farmer in Canada to just get in the mushroom business, because we want to be the best growers possible. So one day, if it's legal, we can then just grow and distribute psilocybin mushrooms. So back to Bruce, he works so closely with us in terms of introducing us to people and helping us grow. And, you know, listen, he's sort of the godfather of cannabis. Whether people love him or hate the guy, he took a company to over a $25 billion market cap at one point that started with a stock around where we are right now, which is probably around $125 million market cap. And Bruce is the king at opening up doors, at working hard, at working honestly, and of course, at creating value. So Bruce is really close with us. He's really close with the Creso Pharma side as well. And if this merger happens, it's anticipated and expected that Mr. Bruce Linton will come on as the chairman of our board. And trust me, he sees the opportunity in the States is one that completely can be capitalized on. The movement is happening not only in just psilocybin, which we spoke of in Oregon and California. We'll see stuff happening in Colorado, you name it, but with THC. And there's opening up the doors for federal legalization. That's, I think, a lot of people's belief. And it's a great opportunity to kind of come in there and get exposure to United States THC Red Light Holland is a great brand. We have Karim Rashid. He's named Time Magazine Structural Designer of the Americas, who's designed a logo for us, designed a companion figure. And we want to be the number one brand in all of the spaces and sectors so we can always ride with the momentum. And that's great. And that's why, by the way, the parent company will be named the Hybrid Lab, because it's a hybrid of psychedelics and cannabis, THC and CBD. And it's also a hybrid of really being this voice for natural occurring products and providing access recreationally, but of course, supporting it through the science, supporting it through R&D if we close out Hallucinix and Mirror Life Sciences, and then technology and innovation. It's an amazing kind of story at this point. We've accomplished a lot. We're in revenues in the Netherlands, and we look to capitalize and seize the moments in other markets right now. So we're really proud of what we've done in a short time.
Well, and I look forward to seeing more from you, Todd, because I do think that the space is just heating up. So we'll be checking back in. Thank you for joining us today.